You mentioned there's also a lot going on here in terms of the NHL, and I can't lie to you. Thursday night, my main TV is going to be on the Toronto Maple Leafs, trying to do something they have not done since I was just out of high school.
Like since I moved to Toronto.
Like it's kind of crazy. And I can't lie to you, my main TV will be on that game with the Suns, or no, sorry, with the Heat game on the small TV. So that's my setup. I'm fired up for that game. I kind of know where you're going. You kind of know where I'm going as a fan, because that's where I'm at with the NHL and hockey.
Yeah.
Austin Matthews or bust. That's about it.
Right.
But talk to me about their chances here, because I'm using the same thing that I just said. If you are a real team with real championship aspirations, I don't care who you're playing, you could figure out a way to win on the road. I'm not saying that the Leafs, follow me here. I'm not saying that the Leafs are going to win, but I'm saying they would show me a lot by winning this game in Tampa.
They would show a lot of people a lot, because a young Matt Russell moved to Toronto in the spring of 2005, fresh off of a canceled NHL season in its entirety. And not that I was even entertaining the idea of becoming a Toronto Maple Leafs fan. That certainly was never the case, but I figured, there's going to be some playoff action at some point. There's going to be some celebration action at some point. And here we are 17 years later, and I'm still waiting to see the celebration. So when you talk about being fired up for Friday, are you positive you're even going to make it to Friday? Because you just might be out in the streets for 24 hours if the Leafs win this game. But I love this series because it's like this low-key predictable series, right? Where we were on Toronto in game 1. We knew Tampa Bay was going to come back in game 2, right? Game 4, whoever won game 3 was probably going to lose game 4, and then it was going to turn into the home ice series where you've got now, of course, Toronto winning game 5. And I tweeted out the other day, like, the best thing about sports betting is when you don't really care who wins, you get to bet on the Maple Leafs in game 5, fist pump that they get the comeback win, and then immediately look for the best price possible on open for the Tampa Bay Lightning in game 6. And that's what I did. And I was able to grab a minus 116 out there, still some minus 120s, et cetera, et cetera. That's all fine by me. My numbers make this close to minus 150, given all of the circumstances and the situations. Metrics through 5 games, we like to talk about that, right? And this is a combination of expected goal share, right? So if both teams have a certain amount of expected goals, 5-on-5, obviously, we always talk about even strength. Both teams have a certain amount, right? Who had the higher percentage, right? And if you have the higher percentage of expected goals, you're probably going to win more often than not. And so it's a combination of expected goal share and high danger chance share. And in this case, it's 51.5 to 48.5 in this series for Tampa at even strength. Now, obviously, Toronto has the lead in this series because they have done better shorthanded. They have done better on the power play, and they have done better at 4-on-4. The rare instances, and of course, that there have been 4-on-4s. I think it was 2 goals 4-on-4 for the Leafs in that game in game 5. So each team got a home game, but since game 3, I think it's a home team series. Whether Toronto chokes in game 7 is another thing entirely. I've said before the season start, or from the postseason starting, this thing is going 7. It's just always has been. It always will be. I can't imagine this not going 7. When you sort of slay a dragon, whether it's a specific team, whether it's a specific circumstance, call like, Red Sox winning the World Series type of a thing. When you do it, you have to do it in the most dramatic way possible. Like, that's just how this works. So we're going to see game 7. We are probably going to see overtime in game 7. And if the Leafs are going to slay this dragon of never, in my modern existence anyway, of living here, of never winning a playoff series, it's got to happen in overtime in game 7. So whether or not it does, I think that's going to be the challenge. I think, listen, there's a possibility that Toronto wins this game. That's obviously a possibility. But if you were telling me at minus 120 that this is some like 54, 55, 56% chance thing, or better than that, or should say worse than that, I can't, right? I think Tampa Bay is at the very least 60% to win this game. So I will be betting on Tampa Bay.
Listen,
I should say I've already bet on Tampa Bay because I did it instantly after the game.
Listen, I totally get it. I totally understand. And as a Leaf fan watching them just struggle year after year, and with this core, the only thing that gives me a little bit of hope was that last game, that comeback was the best playoff game by far that core has played. My hesitation and the thing that gives me worry, right? The things that gives me worry, because I mean, no, but seriously, go back to that game. You had Matthews, Tavares, Nylander, Riley all score. Like they all showed up. That's never happened in this iteration of the Leafs. The one thing that gives me worry is that it takes old man Jason Spezza to be telling you, right? He's the one coming off the bench, gassing up Campbell after like during a TV timeout. He's the one that's in the locker room saying, guys, we need to take it another level, giving the passionate speech. Like, why is that old man Jason Spezza?
But that's his role.
Scratch. No, I know, but my guy was a scratch like early on. Where is the leadership from the core? Where is like, that's the thing that makes me still, you know, take a pause and be like, yeah, they could come out and get blown out in Tampa again because they're not real, right? That's the thing that has me worried. That's what I'm saying.
Well, what should have you worried is that they played their best game in that core's existence of 4 or 5 years, and like the idea that they're going to play as good or better in the next game would be the thing that would concern me.
Totally. But I do have a real question for you, because you've been blessing me with these numbers, you know, the high danger chances and all that. And a lot of it's based on 5-on-5 play. Yeah. But this series by far has had the most special teams of any of the other series. Like the Leafs penalty minutes are insane in this series. How does that reflect then on how much you take out of all of those stats that are so much based on 5-on-5 play? Is it like, do you just, you know, because it's a less of a sample size, do you not take it as much into it, or does it not really matter as much because, you know, especially as the series gets later, the assumption is going to be you're not going to have as many penalties. The refs can do whatever they want. Game 7 is not going to be called the same way that games 1 through 5 have been, right? Like that's a safe assumption.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, yes. Obviously, we don't expect there to be as many penalties as there have been. But even if there is, the idea is, all right, you tell me who's going to take advantage of a lot of penalties, right? Who's going to take advantage of there being high minutes in, you know, shorthanded or man advantage, right? Because the idea is like on a game-to-game basis, it's why you've seen 5-2 and 5-1. And like these games haven't been close up until game 5 is because one team on one night took advantage of, you know, like Tampa Bay didn't take advantage of a 5-minute power play in game 1. Toronto was the better team in special teams. The very next game, Tampa's the better team in special teams, right? If you could predict who the better team was going to be in special teams, like we'd be off and running, right? Like we'd be ready to go here. But over the course of 5 games, essentially both teams could very well be equal because we know going in Toronto's power play, you know, 27, something along those lines %. Tampa Bay's historically really, really good. Not that great this year, but like we're running at like 45% for a portion of the playoffs last year and have basically all the same weapons. So there's just no way to predict. So when we talk about predictive metrics, that's why we focus on the even strength play, because there's more of it. When we get to these games going to overtime, of which there really haven't been that many, strangely enough, in the first round of these playoffs. I think we're talking like 3 overtime games, something along those lines. You know, because we're playing 5-on-5 and these series are going to come down to who wins that overtime game, maybe in a game 7, for example. Then the 5-on-5 stuff is just going to be more important. And the 5-on-5 stuff is going to create more power plays like we talked about, right? If you get 5 and I only get 4, but I'm 25% on the power play and you're 20% on the power play, that's still like 1 expected goal for each side, right? Like, so it is going to be even on either side. So yeah, like if we can look back and you can tell me that there's, you know, the Leafs had 6 power plays and Tampa only had 3 or vice versa, then yeah, I would favor whoever has the more power plays. But I'd be also willing to bet that if you have the more power plays, it means you probably were the better team at even strength because that's how you created those power plays. Yeah. Now you get some weird situations where where weird penalties are happening that are maybe against the run of play. but that's not all that predictive. That would be considered an outlier as well. And so the fun part about this series, or maybe it's not all that fun, it's fun if you've been on the right side of it, is these games have been decided because the outlier has been that one team taking turns has had that big of an advantage in that one game. But over the course of the entire series, Toronto has the slight advantage in non-5-on-5, and that's why they're up 3-2, because Tampa Bay has been the slightly better team at even strength, right? And so I would expect Tampa Bay to be the better team at even strength at home in game 6, and I would expect them to potentially, because of that, be the better team in special teams in game 6. And if they're not, and Toronto can overcome that, that's really, really impressive. But based on the idea that, even looking backwards retroactively, that Tampa is still, again, 51.5 to 48.5 from a probability standpoint. Like this is, this series is tight, man. Like this series is tight. It's where we thought it was going to be. And so nothing's really changed for me. We've done really well as far as game to game betting. And a lot of that is just predicting that this is going to be a really, really close series, and, and just hoping where the chips fall, where they may.
I'll say this much: R.I.P. David Stern. And if Gary Bettman learned anything from Mr. David Stern, Scott Foster would be flying in to be the referee for this game. And we're getting a Saturday night game 7 hockey night in Canada. Oh my damn.
Yeah.
I'm getting like chills just thinking about that already. Let's move on though, because I know I took up. Sorry, I had a lot of Leafs questions there.
That's fine.
Honestly, I'm really interested there, but what else is going on in these NHL playoffs? Because I know there's series where it's kind of like they flipped drastically. All of a sudden, Florida's coming out of nowhere. Edmonton is down. Is Edmonton in some real trouble? Like, tell me which series right now at this point really has, your eye right now, as bleep is hitting the fan.
Can all of the above count? Like we just went through all the game 5s, and we're somehow 7 series are still alive. And of course, I have to get in one last thing. We are contractually obligated to mention that the Tampa Bay Lightning basically never, ever, ever lose 2 games in a row in the playoffs. So we got to put that out there. Until they do. Carolina, Boston is obviously the one that I'm sweating out profusely. I hope this is going 7 versus I quote unquote know that the Toronto and Tampa series is going 7. Let's go back to the metrics here. Looking back at the play that has happened so far, the Bruins are 52.4% to Carolina's 47.6, which, given that they were priced at 50% to start the series, is pretty good, right? They have been better than expectation. The problem is the puck isn't going in the net, and they're not stopping any pucks. Jeremy Swayman, Linus Ullmark, nobody knows what's going on as far as being in the crease for Boston. Hopefully, it's just a matter of the Bruins needing 4 tries to win a road game. I think they win in Boston tonight. I have bet it as such, laying the -130 price on the Bruins. And it'd be nice if the Bruins had won one of the first 3 games in Carolina, of which they were certainly competitive in each one, even though the score wasn't particularly flattering because things would get a little out of control later on. Series price is +280 right now. That is basically a function of parlaying Boston in this game with them in the next game. There is no value on either side necessarily, unless we saw Boston come down a little bit. So there might actually be a little bit of value on just taking the +280 with the Bruins to win the series, but I am already on the game, and I will be on the game probably as well. Although if you already have the series price, you probably don't need to be betting a game 7 unless you have some sort of, extreme confidence in a team. Thought this would be over by now. Unfortunately, it's not, because they went 0 for 3 in Carolina. Speaking of series, I thought they would be over by now. The Oilers and the Kings, I guess, how is this not going 7? I can't believe we're even here at this point. Yeah. McDavid and Draisaitl just electric in the third period of that game in game 5 at home. And then LA comes out, right? Like the momentum folks out there are dying, because all it took was an intermission break for the Oilers. If that game goes an extra 5 minutes in regulation, the Oilers win, and probably win relatively handily. And it doesn't. The Kings get to rally, regroup, and they score a minute into overtime. And now all of a sudden, you're sitting here going are these Oilers really going to do this again? Are they really going to do this? And all we requested was Mike Smith play average goal. At this point, the Kings have 15 goals altogether. They have 6 of those goals on high danger chances converted, of which a pretty decent ratio on Smith, right? They've only converted about 11%, I think, which is still a little bit below average. They have 2 power play goals and they have 1 empty net goal. That means they have 6 non-high danger chance goals on Mike Smith, which I'm here to tell you is too many over the course of 5 games. It's an issue for a couple of goaltenders of higher caliber than Mike Smith. So it happens from time to time, but this is the stuff that you have to keep out. So we're not getting the goaltending that we want from Mike Smith. And by the way, somebody else on Edmonton could do something other than McDavid or Draisaitl. But listen, Edmonton played well enough in game 4 that 4-0 score was probably should have been closer to something along the lines of 2-2 from an expected goal standpoint. And certainly Edmonton blew the Kings out in game 3. I don't know if it's a matter of getting their attention. You'd think game 4 would have gotten their attention. Again, McDavid and Draisaitl are doing everything they possibly can. I'm on Edmonton to win game 6. I'm going to lay that price at -140. Minnesota, St. Louis, I have no idea at any given moment who is going to play well in whatever period of time you want to give me. If you said, well, who's going to play well in the next 10 minutes? I have no idea. Who's going to play well in the next game? I have no idea. This series is off the rails. I wrote about betting on Kirill Kaprizov to win the Conn Smythe at, I think it was something along the lines of 50-1. He's got 7 goals in 5 games, but my guy might not even get a shot at the Colorado Avalanche in the next round because honestly, the rest of the team isn't doing anything. Marc-Andre Fleury, speaking of soft goals, that's a thing that's happening. Again, we predicted that both goaltenders were going to give up soft goals. The Blues have already given up on the goaltender they started with, and now they're back, to Jordan Binnington. I don't know that Minnesota is going to do that because you're going to give Marc-Andre Fleury every opportunity here to succeed. The problem is they only get one more opportunity. Metric standpoint, 55.3% for the Wild, and yet they are down 3-2, which, again, Edmonton was 52.4. Boston was 52.4. Of course, we talked about the 51.5 for Tampa Bay. And so I just look at it and go, this is actually the most lopsided one of these 4 that play tonight. And at 55.3%, the Wild were -140 before the series started, which isn't all that far off from 55.3%. That's about 57, something along those lines, percent if you took some implied win probability. I will bet the Wild tonight if I can get even money. Right now, it's basically a pick 'em on either side. I think -105 is the best we can do here. But honestly, this series is more entertaining, really, than it is sort of worth betting on because it's complete chaos. Speaking of complete chaos, Rangers and Penguins. So game 4, 20-1. In even strength, high danger chances for Pittsburgh in game 4, where they rout the Rangers. It's the biggest even strength play blowout I have ever seen for the course of this series. The metrics for this entire series, 65.1% is the probability of the Penguins winning a series that if they played consistently this way. They played pretty well again yesterday. They get a 2-0 lead. Shesterkin getting pulled in those first 2 games, thought he might get the hook again. We were this close potentially to him getting the hook. The Penguins get a 2-0 lead after not getting a goal on a 5-on-3. I thought they were in trouble when they didn't get that, but they get the 2-0 lead. But then what happens, right? Let's put it this way. Shesterkin, not the problem, okay? The team in front of him is the problem. That was always going to be the problem. And if you were going to bet on the Rangers, you needed Shesterkin to be a hero. If you are backing someone expecting the baseline to be a hero, and he's not, that's on you. Here's the problem. Once we get to Sidney Crosby exiting a game up 2-0, the driver of the play for the Pittsburgh Penguins, now all of a sudden things get turned on their axis. And I was looking at that game yesterday going how am I not going to bet on the Penguins +115, knowing that they have played 65-35, right? And are +115 going into the game. And of course they take a 2-0 lead. And I go, you know what? Winning this series and winning -1.5 on this series is going to be great. But I probably missed an opportunity at +115. And the point is this stuff is on a razor's edge, man. Sidney Crosby goes out and they don't know what to do with themselves. The Rangers score 3 goals. Now the Penguins score to tie it up on an incredibly soft goal on Shesterkin. Again, not being a hero. Now the Rangers get a power play goal late, right? The thing that you and I talk about, is this predictive? Is it predictive that the Penguins wouldn't score 5-on-3 in the first 3 minutes of the game for 2 full minutes? Not really, right? You think they would be the favorite to get a goal in that situation. And in this case, the Rangers get the power play goal that is the difference. That could have been flipped very easily. So the hope is going into game 6 that the Penguins can finish it up. Obviously, the hope is that Crosby's back. If he is, maybe I would bet the Penguins in game 6, but that's why we do the series price. That's why we do Pens -1.5 series price, to already have that stuff in play for the prices that we have it in play for. So I would expect the Penguins to win game 6, but we have already done our work as far as getting a bet down. You mentioned Florida and Washington. Series changer in game 4, potentially. The Caps up a goal, miss out on a breakaway, miss the long shot into the empty net. The Panthers get the goalie pulled. Everybody else in the world is getting empty net goals scored on them. It's the scourge of the playoffs so far. No +1.5 is safe. In this case, the Caps give up the goal to Florida. They give up the goal in overtime. Then they take the 3-0 lead last night, and the Panthers do what they do. They have the most down 3-goal comebacks in the league over the last couple of years. They come back, and that's why they've been favored the way that they have been. That's why they've been favored the way that they have been, because they are capable of that. They take the series lead now, going back to Washington. But honestly, I think I have to play Washington in game 6 because metric standpoint, another 52.5%. It's almost like these books are somehow cooked. But is it a coincidence that all these series are going 6 games, potentially 7, being 52, 51, 55 on either side, the Penguins being the outlier at 65%? I don't think it's a coincidence, man. This is the NHL. This is what the NHL prides themselves on. Parity, games that could go either way, series that could go either way. I got to be on Washington. Anything better than +150. Washington at home in game 6 to force the game 7. And at that point, honestly, who knows? And then finally, Dallas and Calgary last night, game 5. This series, if the games are in Calgary, they are criminally boring. There is next to no scoring chances on either side. When they're in Dallas, it is somehow lit AF. In game 5, 2.02, 1.73 in the expected goals for in favor of Calgary. They win the game 2-1 plus the empty net goal, so 3-1. So it kind of mirrors exactly what the expected goals for would be 5-on-5. Neither team gets a power play goal. Both teams get 5 high danger chances. You and I talked about what's your favorite high danger chance. If they were breakaways, each team gets 5 breakaways. Guess who scored? Calgary was the one who scored on their high danger chance last night at even strength. So they get the win, 2-1 comeback win through 2 periods. They were down 1-0. Looked like we might have another 1-0 ish score. Didn't happen. Calgary played a great third period to not stave off elimination, obviously, but to take a lead. Dallas in game 6, if you have Dallas +1.5, you've had 2 chances to win that bet already, and you still have Dallas at +145 in a game that's about where their money line is going to be. So you've had 2 chances plus the game. If you haven't played Dallas yet, game 6, I'd play Dallas at +140 or better. But if you've already got that bet, you're already set. And then, of course, there's Colorado having absolutely annihilated the Predators. Colorado's sitting at home just waiting for whoever's going to win that Minnesota-St. Louis series. Maybe that starts on Sunday. Maybe it even starts on Saturday. That would be kind of cruel. You never like to see a series end before 7 games and one team only gets a day off. So I would expect that series to start on Sunday. So watch for my preview on Colorado versus whomever, on all of these teams versus whomever. You can find that over, of course, at MRusAuthentic on Twitter. And the Score app, I'm busy this weekend with 4 previews to write. I just don't know who the teams are yet as far as who those previews are going to be written about.
The Stanley Cup playoffs on Fuego.